I still need a lot more diamonds and obsidian, so today's going to be a nice, relaxing mining session. While we work our way through the caves, I've got a bunch of crazy Reddit stories to read and talk about. So let's not waste any time and jump into the first one. This title already has me thinking. Whenever someone says, just help keep the peace, somebody usually ends up doing way more than their fair share. Ida for saying, I'll be driving myself and paying for my own room on the upcoming family vacation, so I won't have to be a babysitter. I, 23M, was repeatedly stuck playing the part of helper and babysitter on family outings. I had to move out of my parents' house because I kept being forced to help watch my 3 nephews. Wow, that's a rough way to start. Last year, we took a family vacation in summer to the coast. I rode along with my parents, and they paid for my hotel room. Only, I had to share that room with 3 rowdy boys because my sister and her husband wanted a room to themselves. Wait, so the parents got their own room, and OP got the kids? I was promised time to do my own things on the vacation, but instead I ended up having to help with these kids. I complained to everyone about it, and was reminded I was there for free. And then we pretty much just did only one thing I wanted to do, which was tour an art gallery. I like doing this whenever I'm at the coast, but the kids find it boring. I mean, of course they do. They're kids. But that's kind of the point. It wasn't supposed to be OP's job to entertain them all week. This year, my parents have a beach trip planned for June, and they assumed I'd be riding along the same way as last year. But I refused. I said I'd be driving myself and paying for my own hotel stay to have my own room. My parents were shocked and tried to remind me of the cost. I said it was no worry. I've got a good job and a decent running car. I can more than afford it. Honestly, that sounds like a pretty reasonable solution. That's when the buts started. I stated the previously listed things as why I'll be driving myself and paying for myself. I want to be able to enjoy this vacation as an adult and not be treated like a child like last year. My parents told my sister, and she called to blow up at me that I'll be ruining the vacation if I'm off doing my own thing while she has to wrangle her 3 boys. There it is. I ended up yelling at her that last year all she did was rope me into her mess. I didn't really get to do much of anything I wanted to do, and I was treated like the bad guy for wanting to just go to an art gallery. I'm a grown man. I deserve my own vacation too. I honestly can't blame him for feeling that way. Now my sister is not speaking to me, and my parents are still trying to convince me to just ride with them to keep the peace. I'm still refusing, but the pressure is getting to me. AITA for not giving in. I know they'll have a pretty hard time when they won't have another person there to help. Notice how nobody is saying, we'll make sure you get your own time this year. They're just asking him to come back. Edit. It's barely been an hour since I posted. But my sister is apparently a Reddit lurker in the mornings, and she saw my post. Not only is she furious with me, but she's also upset no one in the comments is siding with her. Only on Reddit. To make it short, she went on a big rant about how it's so hard to be a parent to triplets, and the least I could do is help because I'm young and single and she needs a break. I stood my ground on my decision, and now she's calling our parents to get them involved. I'm expecting a call from them any minute. Having triplets sounds incredibly difficult. It really does. But they're still her kids. Update. Well, I'm off work now, so I can tell more of what went down. I guess you could say it's over. My sister got our parents involved. They looked at my post and were absolutely horrified by the continuous influx of commenters. Yes, they're very angry with me that I posted here, but I told them that if they just listened to me to begin with, I'd have never needed to. I'm sick of the whole keep the peace mentality that sacrifices me to placate my sister. That line, sacrifices me to placate my sister. That feels like it's been building up for a long time. They in turn went off on my sister, and to make a long story short, the whole vacation has been canceled. The hotel wasn't booked yet anyway, but my parents are arguing with my sister is blaming me, and my nephews are crying because they aren't going to the beach. My sister called me at lunch and basically implied I have no life, which is why I have time to help. I recorded that and told our parents, and that's currently what they're fighting about. Yikes, that escalated fast. Small update. I wasn't going to update again, but here's a little more. Parents said that they won't ever push babysitting of my nephews on me again, and have agreed that what happened last year was unfair to me. Right now they're very angry with my sister for telling me I should help her because she thinks I have no life. My sister is playing the victim, and my brother-in-law is basically saying nope to the whole mess and spending most of his time at work. Thank you to everyone who has commented. You made my day. I think what stands out the most is that OP never said, I'm not coming. He said, I'm paying my own way, driving himself, getting his own room, covering his own expenses. He wasn't asking anyone else to change their plans. He just didn't want his vacation to become unpaid childcare again. And honestly, the parents admitting, in the end, that last year's vacation was unfair tells me a lot. Sometimes setting a boundary feels like you're causing the conflict, but in reality, the conflict was already there. The boundary just made everyone acknowledge it. This title immediately made me stop for a second. At first I was thinking, okay, maybe this is a little petty, but let's actually read it before jumping to conclusions. AITA for refusing to tell my husband the gender of our baby after he skipped going to the doctor appointment with me. My husband and I are expecting. This is our first baby and we're excited. Thing is, he barely attends any doctor appointments with me and his excuses aren't even valid. He's willing to miss the doctor appointment over soccer or a drink or board game with friends. His response is always, I'm not the one carrying the baby. Why do I have to go see the doctor with you? Ouch, that's not a great start. Last week was my final straw. He was supposed to come with me for the baby's gender reveal appointment, but he chose to not come last minute because his friend invited him to fish and chips meal. Wait, fish and chips? Seriously? I was pretty livid, but didn't make a fuss about it. Mom went with me instead. He texted asking me to tell him the results, boy or girl, but I refused to tell him. He kept spam calling me, but I hung up each time. He came home fuming, demanding I tell him the results, but I refused and bluntly told him, since he refused to attend the appointment, then he gets no results till after the baby's born, and said I was willing to die on this hill. Okay, I wasn't expecting her to take it that far. He went off calling me spiteful and immature for doing this and punishing him. He said he's the father and has the right to know. He then called me dramatic since I wasn't alone and Mom was with me. I said he gets no results, period. See, here's where it gets complicated. I completely understand why she's hurt. If somebody skips something this important because they'd rather go out with friends, I'd be upset too. But keeping the baby's gender secret until birth? That's a pretty big escalation. He's been fuming about it and told his family, and they're now pressuring me to stop playing mind games with him and tell him, but I declined. AITA? Edit/update. Hi, so first of all, wow! I did not expect this to blow up. Sorry, can't answer any comments because of feeling overwhelmed. I just wanted to mention that my husband just attempted to contact my doctor to get the results. It didn't go well, and we had another argument over it. He couldn't get it since his mom was the one who made the call. Wait, his mom called the doctor's office? That's a choice. This is one of those stories where I actually changed my opinion as I read it. At first I thought, yeah, just tell him. But then you see the bigger pattern. This wasn't about one missed appointment. According to OP, he skips appointment after appointment because he'd rather do something else. Still, I don't know if hiding the baby's gender until the birth is really the healthiest solution. It feels less like solving the problem and more like making a statement. The bigger issue isn't whether the baby's a boy or a girl. It's that one parent seems to view pregnancy appointments as optional, while the other sees them as an important part of becoming a family. And unless they actually deal with that problem, finding out the baby's gender isn't going to fix much. I have a feeling Reddit was probably split on this one. What about you guys? Was OP justified after everything that happened? Or did keeping the gender a secret go a step too far? Nice first diamond of the day. Hopefully that's just the beginning. Wow, this title sounds pretty simple, but I have a feeling there's a lot more going on here. Eta for calling my mom when my husband refused to listen to me. I, 26 future, recently moved into my first home. I am also 4 months pregnant with our first baby. The pregnancy has been very hard. I have horrible morning sickness. It reached a really bad point where I passed out, hit my head, and my doctor admitted me to the hospital for a week. A whole week. That's serious. When I got home, my husband allowed his brother's family to move into 2 of our 3 bedrooms. They were evicted. I don't know why. One room was my office, which was tossed into our room with papers everywhere. The house was a complete wreck. Trash, dirty clothes, used diapers. I started to cry. Hold on. She comes home from the hospital and walks into that? It was like a light flipped. My husband was no longer the same. My husband told me it wasn't that bad. My reply was, fine, then you should have the house cleaned up before I wake up. Completely exhausted, I fell asleep for 4 hours. I woke up and went to get a drink of water. I couldn't. Every glass we own is scattered around the house. They didn't clean a single thing. I passive-aggressively started to pick up the dirty dishes and washed them. That's heartbreaking. She shouldn't have been cleaning anything. The following morning, I was trying my best to work when their kids were crying non-stop, banging on the walls and so on. Their mom was in her room for hours, ignoring them. When my husband came home, he was upset with me over how I didn't make his brother's wife feel welcome in our home by helping with their kids when she was tired. Then continued to complain how nothing was done while he was at work all day in the house. Yep, the same one he didn't clean. That last line, you can hear how completely done she is. That led to a fight where I told him I am too sick to have company and they need to leave. To which he replied, they are his family and he won't kick them out. I started to cry again. I was beyond frustrated, exhausted. I physically couldn't do it anymore. I called my mom asking if I could come stay with her, telling her the whole story in front of my husband, who at this point was completely shocked, angry, and I could tell he wasn't sure what to do. Honestly, I probably would have called someone too. My mom came with my brothers. I have 3 older brothers. My mom, super angry, told my husband, since your family can stay, so can we. My mom quickly took charge. I was sent to bed. My brothers started cleaning, complaining loudly at how disgusting my brother-in-law's family is, along with what a horrible husband my husband is for putting me through this while I am sick. I'm not gonna lie, that sentence from her mom was kind of legendary. I got a text message from my mother-in-law calling me one for not helping my husband clean up the house and putting my brother-in-law in an uncomfortable position by having my mom boss him around. Wait, she's worried about his comfort, not the pregnant woman who was just hospitalized? Edited to add update. When my mother-in-law showed up, she was super angry outside. I could hear shouting, but couldn't understand what was said. Once inside, she was shocked. My house looked really bad. My brother-in-law lied to her about what happened. My mother-in-law quickly started to help my mom in the bossing mode. My house is not just cleaned, but deep cleaned. Well, I definitely wasn't expecting that plot twist. My brother-in-law and his kids are now staying with my mother-in-law. She didn't know about the eviction. My in-laws helped them financially a couple of months ago. My mother-in-law was not happy about it. Sister-in-law refused to come out of the bedroom. She would scream through the door, but that was about it until her family came to pick her up. Last little bit. I did talk to my husband. He seemed very remorseful. I asked for some space. He is staying at a hotel. He asked to come by and talk to me tonight. My mom and dad are here. Both moms felt like I should have someone here since I am sick. Both moms have set up a meal plan where they trade off who will bring in dinner. It was my mother-in-law's idea. Thank you for all your advice. I truly appreciate it. I'm really glad she has people looking out for her. Talk with husband. Summed up since it lasted 4 hours. It was a hard talk. He is remorseful. Brother-in-law was only supposed to stay for a couple of nights, then leave. Originally, he thought they would be gone before I got home. He said he is tired and emotionally upset himself. When I originally passed out, my husband left to help a friend move. He came home and found me. He said he has no idea how long I was on the floor hurt. He was originally scared I had died. Since then, he has had nightmares. On top of dealing with his family drama, he admitted to dumping his frustration onto me when it's not my fault. He begged me for another chance. That actually explains a lot. Not everything, but a lot. The next steps. We are still separated. He plans on staying at my brother's house in his casita. We are going to go to marriage counseling and individual counseling. He asked if he could come when the home health nurse comes each night and to my doctor's appointments. I agreed to that. Update on brother-in-law. His wife admitted to having an affair. She told him she got married too soon and doesn't want the responsibilities of being a mom anymore. I am not sure what will happen with him and his kids, but I am shocked that she feels this way, especially with her kids. This story went in about 5 different directions. At first, it looked like it was just about a messy house. Then it became about family boundaries. Then it turned into a marriage that's clearly been under a huge amount of stress. And by the end, there was an entirely different family crisis happening in the background. I don't think calling her mom made OP the bad person here. She was sick, pregnant, recovering from a hospital stay, and completely overwhelmed. Sometimes asking for help isn't creating drama. It's recognizing that you can't carry everything by yourself. I'm just glad it sounds like both families eventually started focusing on the actual problem instead of blaming the person who needed help the most. I swear this cave just keeps going. Every time I think I've reached the end, another tunnel opens up. Oh, this title already sounds painful. Let's see what happened. AITA for canceling Mother's Day celebration that I arranged for my wife after hearing what she told my son. I, M/37, have a 13-year-old son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16-year-old daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. So, this wasn't a new issue. They'd already talked about it. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads up so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. Wait, what? I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why, and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. Ouch, that had to hurt. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. Man, that sentence is brutal, especially to hear as a 13-year-old. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, canceled. No. Okay. I honestly don't blame him for reacting in the moment. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that, and that I only heard part of the conversation, but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing, and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I have to admit, the first thing she worried about was explaining it to her family, not what she'd just said to his son. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after tantrum. Early this morning, she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore. I kept waiting for the part of the story that would completely change my perspective, and it never came. Could there have been more context? Maybe. She even claimed he only overheard part of the conversation, but based on what OP actually heard, his 13-year-old son was trying to reassure her that he'd behave, and she basically told him she didn't even understand why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her. That's the part I can't get past. Imagine finally working up the courage to say, "I'll do my best," and hearing that in return. The canceled dinner almost feels secondary. The real damage happened in that conversation before OP even walked into the room. Parents and step-parents don't have to be perfect, but if a child is making an effort to feel like part of the family, pushing them away like that can leave a mark for a very long time. I'm really curious what you guys think about this one. Do you think canceling the celebration was justified, or should OP have handled it differently after everyone had a chance to cool down? Okay, this title already sounds like somebody crossed a pretty major line. Let's find out what happened. AITA for canceling the entire vacation when I found out that my stepdaughters deliberately hid my daughter's passport to get her to stay home. I've been married to my wife Beth for 5 years. I have a bio daughter named Jessica. She's 18. And I also have 2 stepdaughters named Monica and Leah. They're 25 and 28. Both are single moms and live with us currently. There's been issues about my stepdaughters asking my daughter to babysit the kids. Jessica didn't have a problem with it at first, since this is what she does to earn money. But since her stepsisters don't pay her much, she just refused to babysit. We worked this out by having my wife take care of paying for the babysitting. So there was already some tension about childcare. That's probably important. I planned a family vacation for 3 days, and everyone wanted to go. However, both Monica and Leah suggested that Jessica stay home and watch the kids since Beth doesn't want her grandkids to come. They said it's because the kids are used to Jessica and hiring another babysitter would cause issues, and also said that Jessica isn't too fond of our destination. But it was obvious that Jessica wanted to go. They insisted, and Beth offered to pay her double, and there was just a lot of back and forth on this until I demanded they stop bringing it up. Sounds like Jessica already made her decision. They just didn't like the answer. We were supposed to go last week, but when everybody had packed their bags and it was time to go, Jessica found out that she didn't have her passport on her. We searched her bag, then went home and searched there. Beth and my stepdaughters kept insisting that we go back to the airport or else we'd miss our flight. They insisted that Jessica stay at home with the kids. They even told the new babysitter to go home because she was no longer needed. Wait, they sent the babysitter home before anyone even knew where the passport was? I refused to go and kept searching for the passport until Monica admitted that she helped Leah hide Jessica's passport to get her to stay home with the kids. No way. That changes everything. I was livid. I tried to get her to tell me where it was, but she said Leah had it. Leah denied it. So I threatened to cancel the vacation. That's when they gave it back. So they really did hide it. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was planned. I decided to actually cancel the vacation and blew up at both of them and berated them. They stayed upstairs for a while, and Beth refused to speak to me and said that I punished my stepdaughters for worrying about their kids and wanting them to stay with someone they know. I got told I overreacted and ruined the trip for everybody. Editing to mention that kicking my stepdaughters out isn't possible since my wife co-owns the house that we currently live in. I was trying to think of another explanation while reading this. Maybe somebody misplaced the passport. Maybe it was meant to be a joke that went too far. But no, they admitted they hid it on purpose. What really stands out to me is that this wasn't just asking Jessica for a favor. They asked. She wanted to go. Dad told them to stop bringing it up. Instead of accepting that, they secretly tried to take the decision away from her. That's the part I can't get past. They didn't just inconvenience her. They intentionally tried to stop her from leaving the country so she'd be forced to babysit. And honestly, once trust gets broken like that, I can understand why OP canceled everything. If someone is willing to hide another person's passport to get their way, how are you supposed to pretend everything's fine for the next 3 days? This vacation was already over the moment they decided to hide that passport. Canceling it didn't ruin the trip. It was the consequence of what had already happened. Wow. This already sounds incredibly messy, and I have a feeling there isn't going to be a clean ending to this one. Ayate for ruining both my parents' marriages for disowning me? I am the byproduct of my parents' extramarital affair. Both of them had spouses at the time. My birth mother got pregnant and had to tell her husband as he was overseas when I was conceived, so there was no way I was his. A few months after I was born, they decided not to divorce. I was given to my grandparents on my mother's side to raise with my birth father, secretly paying child support without his wife's knowledge. Man, that's a complicated situation to be born into. Both my parents had other children. My dad's side knows nothing about me, but my siblings on my mom's side were told that I am adopted by my grandparents. Recently, I decided that I wanted to know more about my dad's family, and I sent a friend request to one of my siblings and my dad so I could get to know him. Well, he freaked out and contacted my birth mom, and they asked to speak to me over Skype. They both told me that they couldn't risk staying in contact with me and told me that they were going no contact and to please respect it and move on with my life. Ouch. I can't even imagine hearing that from your own parents. Well, I did pretty much the opposite. I contacted my dad's wife and shared screenshots of our conversations and told her everything. She is now divorcing him. While on my mother's side, I told both my siblings, who then went on to tell extended family, including her husband's side, so now they are separated and my siblings hate my mother. Yeah, that escalated fast. Currently, my siblings on both sides' lives have been upturned, and after the satisfaction has worn off, I feel like I unnecessarily hurt them through my parents. AITA for ruining my parents' marriages? This is one of those stories where I feel bad for just about everyone except the people who created the situation in the first place. The siblings, they didn't ask for any of this. OP didn't ask to be born into this. The grandparents got pulled into it. Everyone inherited a secret that started decades earlier. The part that really sticks with me is the Skype call. If OP had shown up demanding money or trying to destroy the family immediately, I'd probably feel differently. But from the post, it sounds like OP just wanted to know their father and siblings. Instead, both parents basically said, "We can't risk our lives changing because of you." That's an incredibly painful thing for someone to hear. Now, did telling both families cause a huge amount of damage? Absolutely. There's no denying that. The siblings especially ended up caught in the middle. But here's the thing. The affairs happened years before OP ever sent that friend request. The deception lasted for years because the parents chose to keep it hidden. OP didn't create that truth. OP revealed it. Those aren't exactly the same thing. I honestly wish this story had a happier ending. Instead, it just feels like decades of secrets finally caught up with everyone. And unfortunately, when something like that comes out, there's usually no way for anybody to walk away completely unhurt. Okay, this title is already making me nervous. Deleting wedding photos? There's no way this ends without somebody being furious. AITA for deleting my friend's wedding photos in front of them? I'm not really a photographer. I'm a dog groomer. I take lots of photos of dogs all day to put on my Facebook and Instagram. It's my thing, if that makes sense. A cut and a photo with every appointment. I very seldom shoot things other than dogs, even if I have a nice setup. A friend got married a few days ago, and wanting to save money, asked if I'd shoot it for them. I told him it's not really my forte, but he convinced me by saying he didn't care if they were perfect. They were on a shoestring budget, and I agreed to shoot it for $250, which is nothing for a 10-hour event. Yeah, that is really cheap for 10 hours. On the day of, I'm driving around following the bride as she goes from appointment to appointment before the ceremony, taking photos along the way. I shoot the ceremony itself, and during the reception, I'm shooting speeches and people mingling. I started around 11 a.m. and was due to finish around 7:30 p.m. Around 5 p.m., food is being served, and I was told I cannot stop to eat because I need to be photographer. In fact, they didn't save me a spot at any table. I'm getting tired, and at this point, kind of regretting doing this for next to nothing. It's also unbelievably hot. The venue is in an old Veterans Legion, and it's like 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's no AC. Hold on. No food, no seat, and apparently no air conditioning either? I told the groom I need to take off for 20 minutes to get something to eat and drink. There's no open bar or anything. I can't even get water, and my 2 water bottles are long empty. He tells me I need to either be photographer or leave without pay. Not even water? Come on. With the heat, being hungry, being generally annoyed at the circumstances, I asked if he was sure, and he said yes. So I deleted all the photos I took in front of him and took off, saying I'm not his photographer anymore. If I was to be paid $250, honestly, at that point, I would have paid $250 just for a glass of cold water and somewhere to sit for 5 minutes. Wow, they actually deleted them right there. Was I the one in the wrong? They went right on their honeymoon, and they've all been off of social media, but a lot of people have been posting on their wall asking about photos with 0 responses. This is one of those stories where I changed my opinion halfway through. When I first read the title, I thought, deleting wedding photos? That's way too far. But then I kept reading. No meal, no place to sit, no water. Working in extreme heat for 10 hours. And when OP asked for a 20-minute break, the groom basically said, leave if you want, but you're not getting paid. That said, deleting the photos is still the part I struggle with. Walking away, I completely understand. Refusing to keep working under those conditions, Also understandable. But once those files were gone, there was no way to undo that decision. Those are memories that can't be recreated. The ceremony, the speeches, the reactions, everything from earlier in the day. So I honestly think both sides made terrible decisions. The couple treated someone doing them a huge favor, like they didn't even deserve basic food or water. And OP responded in the most permanent way possible. This entire situation probably could have been avoided with something as simple as, "Of course, go grab some food. We'll see you in 20 minutes. Instead, everybody lost. Okay, this title made me curious immediately, because there's a difference between charging a high rate and forcing somebody to hire you. Let's see what happened. AITA for saying my babysitting rates are $35 an hour? I'm a software engineer with a full-time job and a side hustle of doing freelance coding work in my own time. I've always been the type to have a side hustle I put a lot of my free time into. I get really bored sitting idle. My freelance hourly rates are $60 an hour, and at my full-time job, my hourly pay works out to about $40 an hour. So that's how I value my time. Fair enough, everybody values their own time differently. Anyway, over Christmas vacation, I was staying at my parents' house. My cousin was also staying over with her 3 young kids from Christmas to New Year's. I'd been planning on doing some work on my freelance projects when I had free time. In the mornings, when my family had no plans. I wasn't in any rush. I was already ahead of schedule on them all, but I didn't really have anything else to do. It was in a really rural area, and it's like an hour drive to the nearest anything. Then my cousin and her husband asked if I could babysit all day for 3 days so they could visit some friends in the area and hang out with just adults. I said I had planned on doing freelance work at the library, and she offered to pay me to babysit. So, they were the ones who brought up paying. That's an important detail. I said I could if they got close to my freelance rates. She wanted a number, and although my freelance rates are $60, I didn't feel like that was right. It was high, but I didn't want to go too low. Honestly, babysitting 3 kids would be harder for me than the routine coding work I had for my freelance project. I don't know a lot about kids, and I've never babysat for long, and I had a feeling it would be stressful and difficult. So I said $35, which is below what I make hourly at work, and what is the bare minimum I'd value my time for if that time is spent doing difficult work. Whether it's a normal babysitting rate or not, that's the number she decided would make it worth giving up her own plans. And she went crazy at me, saying that's a ridiculous rate for babysitting, that I was entitled and being selfish, that I'm trying to take advantage of how she didn't have other options, etc. I said that's way below what I'd be making if I had the time to do my own work, and I'd be putting off my own work to babysit. Okay, this conversation is going downhill fast. Her husband then got mad at me, saying that I was a 24-year-old girl, that I'm darn near a child myself, that my time is not worth that much, and it's childish to say that it was, and that I was a stupid girl for not knowing that babysitting costs like $15 an hour. When I grew up and have kids of my own, I will see how stupid I was being. Yeah, the second someone starts insulting you, instead of just saying, "No thanks, that's out of our budget," the conversation's basically over. I was kind of done with being called stupid, so I just told them I hoped they could find someone else. My mom thinks that I asked for something offensive, and my cousin and her husband obviously did too. AITA for giving that number? I think this comes down to one simple question. Did OP owe them babysitting? From the story, no. They asked. She already had plans. They offered to pay. She gave them the price that would make changing her plans worthwhile. Now, would I personally pay $35 an hour for babysitting? Probably not. I'd almost certainly look for someone else. But that's exactly the point. You're allowed to say, "That's too expensive." You're not entitled to tell someone their time isn't worth what they think it is. And honestly, the funniest part is that they probably would have had a much better chance if they'd just accepted the first no. Instead, they asked for a price, got one they didn't like, and somehow turned it into an argument about her entire career and life. To me, giving someone a quote isn't the same thing as forcing them to accept it. They were free to decline, just like OP was free to spend those 3 days doing something else. Oh, I have a feeling this one is going to get emotional. Let's see what happened. AITA for making a scene of my adult son and sticking my nose in his marriage. I'm 60 and bad with the whole text thing on mobiles, so I'm hoping I won't be judged on my grammar. Here's the important background. My daughter-in-law, 32, and son, 33, have 3 children aged 3 years, 2 years, and 4 months. He convinced her to be a stay-at-home mom and sell her business by telling her how good of a childhood he had and how happy my marriage was, without telling her, which I today found out, that our arrangement was everything before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. was split 50-50. Sunday was my day off, and I was brought out twice a week. Okay, that's actually a pretty big detail. He was using his parents' marriage as an example, but leaving out half of it. On to the story. On my last visit, I noticed my daughter-in-law was struggling mentally, so I, my sister, 55F, and her girlfriend, 53, pulled our money together and paid for a spa weekend for them while we'd babysit the kids for her birthday last weekend. I was preparing on Thursday evening for the kids to arrive when my daughter-in-law rang me holding back tears, saying they won't be going because my son's friend came to town, and he said he wanted to spend the weekend with his friends catching up. Seriously? On her birthday weekend? I pressed her a little, and I'm talking a little about her situation. She came clean about him doing no chores, no date nights, and her basically doing all of the childcare because that's what stay-at-home moms do. I was honestly disgusted. That sounds exhausting, especially with 3 kids that young. I convinced her to drop me off the kids and bring a friend to the spa. I even dipped into my savings to give her 500 euros to buy herself something nice. When she dropped me off the kids, I begged her to tell me where my son was. After 5 minutes, she told me the bar. She left for the spa, while I left for the bar. She knew I was going there, and knew my sister and my sister-in-law were taking care of the kids. Uh-oh. I think I know where this is heading. Here's where I might be the one in the wrong. I went to the bar where he and his friends were. I sat down next to the group and asked my son, "Did I fail you as a mother, or was it your father? Because we both thought your partner comes before your silly drunk friends." The post is getting long enough, but long story short, I humiliated him and got myself banned from a bar. Getting banned from the bar was not on my bingo card. My daughter-in-law said she will be taking the kids to her parents when she gets back tomorrow, and my son is calling me one for humiliating him and sticking my nose in his marriage. Maybe I should have stayed out. I don't know. Edit. I just wanted to say I'm heartbroken, not by any judgment towards me or my parenting skills, but the fact a lot of people are shocked I care about my daughter-in-law's mental health and stood up for her against my son's bad behavior. I just want to say, as a mother, my advice is treat your daughter, son, or non-binary in-laws how you'd want your children to be treated. Respect goes a long way. I actually really liked that last sentence. Now, did confronting him publicly make things messier? Yeah, it probably did. If she'd waited until later, maybe the conversation would have been calmer. But I also understand why she snapped. She finds out her daughter-in-law has been drowning with 3 very young kids. A birthday gift meant to give her one relaxing weekend gets canceled because her son would rather hang out with his friends. And then she discovers he'd been using her own marriage as proof that this lifestyle was normal, without mentioning that she and her husband actually shared the work. That's the part that really got me. He wasn't just neglecting his responsibilities. According to the story, he was using a rewritten version of his parents' relationship to convince his wife that this was how things were supposed to be. Could his mom have chosen a better place than a crowded bar? Probably. But if I were in her shoes, I honestly don't know if I'd have stayed quiet either. This whole story just made me feel bad for the daughter-in-law. Hopefully that spa weekend gave her at least a little bit of the break she clearly needed. This title is interesting. At first I thought, maybe it's just a tiny signature somewhere. But let's read the story. Ayate for getting mad my artist hid their initials in my tattoo? This is a short one. Names changed for privacy. I went to a tattoo shop in my area with a photo of the tattoo I wanted. It was one my dad had gotten to honor my past grandfather, whose father also had it. But the point is, it was important to me that the tattoo looked exactly as it did in the photo. That feels like an important detail. This wasn't original artwork. It was a family tattoo with a lot of meaning. I get to the shop. I explain everything. I pay, get the tattoo, and we're done. I think it looks awesome. Everything is great. Until a few weeks later when I show my great-grandmother the tattoo. She's ecstatic, grabs my arm to look at and compliment it, then asks, "Who's a J?" Uh-oh. That's probably not what you want to hear. I ask her what she means, and she points out on the tattoo where the initials A and J, or maybe T, were hidden into the tattoo. I'm instantly upset, as my artist's name is Alice Trevor. She tries to assure me it's no big deal, if I hadn't noticed it until now, but I still reached out to the artist, sort of irritated. They told me the style of art I got is called traditional, and it's pretty trad for all artists who do that style to do it. Maybe that's common. I honestly don't know enough about tattoo traditions to say, but that still feels like something you should tell the client first. I demanded a partial refund and they refused, so I complained to the owner who made the artist give me a full refund. Now the artist is running a full smear campaign, talking about moving shops and all kinds of stuff. My sister says I'm the one in the wrong for pushing the issue, but I feel like, at the end of the day, I told you exactly what I wanted, and you didn't do that. AITA? I think this really comes down to one sentence from the beginning of the story. It was important to me that the tattoo looked exactly as it did in the photo. If the artist wanted to add their initials because it's part of their style, that's completely their choice, but the client should know about it before the needle touches their skin. Because once it's there, it's there. It's not like changing the signature on a painting. This is something someone carries for the rest of their life. Now, would I have demanded a full refund? I'm honestly not sure. The tattoo itself sounds like it was well done. The problem wasn't the quality, it was that an extra detail was added without permission. The part that surprises me most is the shop owner. If the owner sided with the customer strongly enough to issue a full refund, that makes me wonder if the artist wasn't actually supposed to do that without asking. Either way, this feels like something that could have been completely avoided with one simple question before the tattoo started. Hey, I usually hide my initials in traditional pieces. Are you okay with that? That would have taken about 5 seconds. Instead, it turned into this whole situation. Here's another one, and I already have a feeling this isn't really about the flower girl. Ida for not letting my miracle baby niece be my flower girl at my wedding? My 27 F-ward, older brother and Sil, both mid-30s, just welcomed their first child a year and a half ago after years of trying. After many failed attempts, Sil was told that she wouldn't be able to conceive due to a medical condition she has. They finally got pregnant. Since having my niece, the baby has been the center of attention at every family event we've had since she was born. Birthdays, weddings, family get-togethers, you name it. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my niece, but it can get to be a little too much when my sil goes on and on about how long they tried to conceive, complications they've had, miscarriages they've had, etc. Like a little too much info. Many family members have commented on how it's a little bit excessive, but no one has said anything because they don't want to sound like the bad guy. I can understand why they're grateful. After everything they went through, of course that child is incredibly special to them. But that doesn't automatically make every family event about her. Anyway, I'm getting married in the spring, and my brother and SIL approached me last weekend about having my niece be the flower girl. Now my fiancé, 35M, has 2 children, 10M and 6F, from his previous marriage. His son is one of his groomsmen, while his daughter had asked to be our flower girl when we told them the news that we were getting married a year ago, as it's something she always wanted to do, so of course we said yes. Honestly, that already sounds settled to me. She asked a year ago. They said yes. So I explained this to my SIL when she asked me about my niece. She asked if my stepdaughter can just carry my niece with her. I said I don't think she'd be comfortable with that considering she's 6. She then asked why I can't give that role to my niece and allow herself to carry my niece down as the flower girl. I said no, because I already promised my stepdaughter. Yeah, once you've promised a kid something like that, taking it away is a really big deal. She then started going off about how my lack of effort to incorporate my niece is disgusting to her. I should honor her in some way, since I know how long and hard they tried for my niece. Wait, honor the niece? At someone else's wedding? That's where I got confused. Now, I may sound like the bad guy for this, but I kind of got fed up and snapped and said, incorporate my niece how? By the time the wedding comes around, she'll be 2 years old. The entire family already knows your story about how long and hard you guys tried for her. What more do you expect me to do to honor her? She started crying and said that clearly I don't love my one and only niece and I'm letting her down. I said of course I love my niece and obviously she's going to be involved in pictures and stuff, but I'm not going to let my stepdaughter down by giving my niece a role she's too young to remember anyway. Honestly, that last point is hard to argue with. A 2-year-old isn't going to remember being a flower girl. A 6-year-old who's been excited about it for a year almost certainly will remember having it taken away. Well, now SIL and my brother are upset with me for not letting my niece be flower girl and are running around telling the rest of the family I don't love my niece. My mom had been trying to stay neutral, but thinks my stepdaughter would understand if I explained to her I need to give that role to my niece. I'm firm in my decision, though, and my fiancé is thankful that I didn't let his daughter down. AITA for not allowing my niece to be the flower girl? I think this stopped being about a flower girl the moment SIL said the wedding should honor her daughter. Every parent thinks their child is special, and after years of infertility, I completely understand why they treasure her so much. But someone else's wedding isn't the place to make your child the centerpiece. The person I actually felt worst for here was the 6-year-old. She asked first. She was promised the role. And suddenly adults are discussing whether it should be taken away because another child exists. That's a really unfair position to put her in. If OP had never promised anyone, sure, that's a different conversation. But once that promise was made, keeping your word matters. Especially to a kid. I also don't think saying you don't love your niece is a fair argument. You can absolutely love someone and still not redesign your wedding around them. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Okay, this title sounds terrible, but I have a feeling there's a catch. AITA for wearing a wedding dress at a wedding? So my friend, 20F, and I, 19M, have been friends for a few years, and she recently got engaged. A week ago, I got a DM from her for a small costume party she was hosting as a celebration for her getting engaged. I asked if there was a theme, and she said there wasn't. I'm a cosplayer, so I had a lot of choices. I didn't want to rock up in an anime cosplay, so I thought it would be funny to go to an engagement party as the corpse bride. I arrived at her house yesterday, and everything seemed normal. A few people complimented my costume, and I was having a lot of fun. So far, nothing weird. It's literally a costume party. After 10 minutes, my friend's fiance walked out in a black tuxedo and announced this was actually their wedding. Apparently, my friend saw a video of someone doing this and wanted to do the same. Wait, what? Okay, that's a twist. He asked us all to go to the backyard for the ceremony to begin. I went straight to him. I asked him if I should quickly go home and change my outfit and that I would get back before it started. He told me it was fine since I didn't know this was the wedding. I trusted him and followed everyone outside. They got married and everything seemed good. The reception was just in their house again, so everyone just walked back inside and picked up where they left off. I tried talking to my friend and celebrating with her, but she kept making excuses to not talk to me. Honestly, if the groom says you're fine, I'm probably going to believe him too. I assumed it was just because she was tired from the big day and wanted some alone time. I didn't bother her after that, and the party soon ended. I got home, and half an hour passed when my phone started getting notifications. I checked, and it was my friend texting me. She was calling me every name in the book and telling me how I ruined her wedding. I was really confused and asked what I did. Oh, here we go. That only made her more angry. She told me it was basic knowledge not to wear a wedding dress to a wedding. I reminded her I had no idea it was a wedding and that I asked her now husband if I should change, and he said it was fine. She didn't respond, but I got a text from her husband. He asked why I would tell her he said it was fine. I told him he said it was fine. Then he said how I should have changed anyways, and it's my fault that the two are now fighting over this. No way. So now he's pretending he never gave permission? That's rough. I've tried texting her that I was sorry, and if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. I woke up today and saw her and her husband have blocked me on everything. So, AITA for not changing out of the wedding dress when I found out it was actually a wedding. Edit. I am a guy. I cosplayed the character Emily from The Corpse Bride and had blue paint all over. I'm also Australian, and I've never heard a costume party meaning fancy. Everyone was dressed up in funny costumes. Okay, the edit somehow makes this even funnier. This wasn't someone trying to upstage the bride. It was a guy, painted blue, dressed as a Tim Burton character. And honestly, I keep coming back to one moment. He immediately offered to leave and change. He didn't argue. He didn't insist on staying. He literally tried to fix the situation before the ceremony even started. The groom said, "It's fine." So, what exactly was OP supposed to do? Ignore the groom? Leave anyway? Miss the ceremony? And hope everyone was okay with it? The funniest part is that this whole problem only existed because the couple intentionally tricked everyone. If you invite people to what they believe is a costume engagement party, you really can't be shocked when someone shows up wearing a costume. It sounds like the newlyweds ended up arguing with each other afterward, and OP became the easiest person to blame. From everything in the story, though, I really don't know what else he could have done. He asked, he got an answer, and he trusted it. All right, we've made it to the last story. Let's see how we're ending today's Reddit rabbit hole. AITA for telling my friend her parents bought her house, not her? The title sounds bad, but hear me out. Backstory. I, first 28, have a friend, first 28, who purchased a house late last year. It's an awesome 2-story townhouse, and I've been over there plenty of times to help out with moving, decorating, and for hanging out. As mentioned in the title, her parents purchased the house for her and her partner. I truly have no issue with this, as the housing market is terrible for buyers, so more power to them for being homeowners. I recently, unfortunately, inherited my parents' house, which is a 3-bedroom out in the sticks. That word, unfortunately. That already tells you inheriting the house wasn't exactly a happy event. The issue. We went appliance shopping because most of the stuff in the house was 10 to 15 years old. We were standing with an employee who I had asked to recommend some smaller items like toasters and kettles when the employee asked if I was moving out as general chit-chat. I told him I was moving and he asked whether I bought or rented. I told him bought because it was just easier and less awkward than telling him I inherited the house. He told me that was cool and began talking about the toasters again when my friend cut in that I had inherited my house, not purchased it. Why even correct that? The conversation was already over. The employee went quiet and I gave her a "what was that" face. I was taken aback. She continued on saying, "Yeah, I purchased my house." I asked, "Does it really matter? I'm here to buy some kitchen appliances, not tell this guy my personal issues." She grinned and said, "It's just for the record," which made me more confused and annoyed. Oh, I think I know where this is going. I replied, "Oh, okay then. If it's just for the record, your parents purchased your house for you." The employee quickly retreated and she walked outside of the shop. I caught up with her and she said I was a massive jerk for pointing out she couldn't afford to own without her parents' help. I returned with a very similar, "My parents also helped me with getting a house too, just in a really terrible way." My partner agrees with me, saying that she's the one that opened that door, but our other friends are split almost 50-50. Edit. Holy heck, this blew up. Sorry I wasn't clear with my friends being 50-50. Half think I'm not the one in the wrong, and the others think we're both in the wrong, and I shouldn't have escalated the problem. I think the line that completely changed this story was, "It's just for the record," because until then, it sounded like an awkward little misunderstanding, but that comment made it feel intentional, like she really wanted the employee to know there was a difference between the two of them. And here's the irony. Both of them received houses because of their parents, one through an incredibly generous gift, the other because her parents passed away. Those are obviously very different circumstances, but neither one is really something to brag about in front of a stranger buying toasters. Could OP have just ignored the comment? Sure, that probably would have ended the conversation. But if someone publicly corrects you over something that personal, I can also understand why the response came out the way it did. Well, that wraps up today's batch of Reddit stories. Some of these were funny, some were unbelievably awkward, and a few were honestly pretty heartbreaking. If you enjoyed hanging out with me, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And if there's one story today that you completely disagreed with me on, let me know down in the comments. I always like reading different opinions, especially on these AITA posts. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.